So you mentioned Soteria houses. So the Soteria project started by Dr. Lauren Mosher. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
could you talk about how those are structured? Because they do treat people in acute phases, right?
Yes.
So
So
how?
yeah, well, there's first I'll go to the history of kind of there was a would have been back in the 80s. There was quite a few, particularly in the San Francisco area in the US, but elsewhere. There was like Soteria, Diabasis, which had more of a Jungian kind of approach. There was I Ward, and others too that I'm kind of blanking on at the moment. And the idea there was and I'm not quite sure what the catalyst, why like they suddenly popped up at that particular time. I know the World Health Organization studies were already starting to come out, so that might have been a factor. But anyway, there was a recognition that the majority of people, if held right in first episode psychosis, can fully recover. So there was a real belief and even evidence for that. And so, and there's also evidence. So back then, there was actually a lot of research, and I have this in my book, doing long-term studies on people on and off antipsychotics. So someone has a first episode of psychosis. There was actually trial, randomized controlled trials. Some people were put on the antipsychotics, other were put on anything. They're, given other psychosocial support, et cetera. And they found that in the short term, those on the antipsychotics did better, within a year. But after a year, those who didn't get put on the antipsychotics were actually doing better. And actually, and that happened again and again. And the psychiatric, or I should say, the pharmaceutical industry stopped doing those studies because it wasn't making the drugs look good. And so to this day, you will not find long-term studies like that anymore. Like I've looked and looked, and because it makes almost all drugs, antidepressants, anxiolytics, et cetera, stimulants, it's the same story: short-term harm, short-term benefit, long-term harm. So anyway, back to the 80s, they had this kind of information like, hey, the drugs seem to be hurting a lot of people in the long term. A lot of people recover spontaneously. Let's set up these residential kind of quote unquote blowout houses, they call them, and really hold them in a container that's really safe. So we're not going to let anyone hurt each other or themselves, but we're going to give them maximal freedom within that safety. And they didn't even hire like really highly specialized therapists. It was really just the criteria was, as far as the people holding the container, were that they were empathetic. So they had, strong skills in empathy. They were naturally compassionate and kind. And then they created opportunities for them to do things like expressive arts. They varied a little bit from each other, but generally the same. An opportunity to basically work with their experiences rather than trying to stop them. So someone's going into these extreme states and they might have extreme emotions. There'd be like a rage room where they could just go like beat on some pillows for a while. Or maybe they're feeling some real creativity coming up. They could go into an art room and they could really, or music, play with music or art to kind of let this creativity move through them and get integrated. And they had people who would listen to them and just empathize and really hear their story and help them to create a coherent narrative. And in general, they're having really great results. And this is all empirically, plenty of empirical data around this. And again, that magic 85% number was coming out again. About 85% of the people were fully recovering within like 6 to 8 weeks on average. And this became a huge threat for the status quo. And so the first Soteria house ended up, I guess there's a few, getting shut down without any clear reason by the state. They were having great results. And as far as I could tell, there was a lot of political lobbying against it, essentially, and to shut them down because it was really threatening the whole status quo. And then same with the other homes; they basically all got suppressed, shut down as well.